Are you still a virgin? The question was a low, intimate whisper, laced with menace and a promise of trouble. Jennifer Hawkins looked up from the auction catalog to find Enzo Calabrese leaning far too close, his sharp suit immaculate, his smile predatory. The closed-door gathering hummed with the quiet intensity of Milan's elite collectors, dealers, and men whose wealth came from sources no one dared question aloud. But his voice had cut through it all with deliberate, invasive precision. "I'm sorry?" She blinked at the capo, heat rising in her chest, not embarrassment, but indignation. "You heard me." Enzo's grin widened, his eyes glittering with calculated mischief. "Are you still a virgin, Miss Hawkins? If you believe that even Mafia bosses deserve a chance at love, subscribe and like the story to show you agree." 3 months in Milan. 3 months working as a historian on what she believed was a prestigious, if secretive, restoration project. And somehow she'd ended up at an exclusive auction surrounded by Italy's most dangerous men, being asked the most invasive question of her life. She should have been mortified. Should have walked away. But something in Enzo's deliberate provocation, combined with months of navigating veiled threats and unspoken rules, made her reckless. "You could be lucky." The words came out bold, defiant, accompanied by a smile that matched his energy. Enzo's eyebrows shot up, delighted. Several nearby conversations stuttered to a halt. And then the temperature in the room didn't just drop, it ignited. Jennifer felt him before she saw him. Alvaro Cremonesi materialized from the shadow of the marble pillars like a storm breaking over the Duomo. All controlled fury wrapped in a stark white shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, the careful polish he maintained stripped away in an instant. His hand gripped her upper arm with proprietary force, fingers pressing into her skin hard enough that she felt the heat of his palm through the fabric. "With who?" His voice was quiet, deadly, nothing like the carefully modulated, distant tone he'd used with her during late-night briefings in his office. The entire room had gone silent now. Jennifer's heart hammered against her ribs as she looked up at her employer, her enigmatic boss who barely spoke to her beyond necessary instructions, who watched her with dark, unreadable eyes during their rare meetings, who maintained a wall of professional distance so absolute she'd convinced herself he barely noticed her presence. Except she could read him now. The fury there was unmistakable, raw and visceral, and completely irrational, given that he'd never indicated any personal interest in her whatsoever. "I was joking," she managed, voice smaller than she'd like. "Enzo asked a ridiculous question, and I gave a ridiculous answer." "It wasn't ridiculous." Enzo's amusement had evaporated, his posture shifting to something more cautious. "It was inappropriate." "My apologies, Miss Hawkins." But Alvaro wasn't looking at Enzo. His focus remained locked on her, jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin, his grip on her arm unrelenting. "You thought that was funny?" His voice dropped lower, a razor wrapped in silk. "Announcing something like that in a room full of men who would take it as an invitation. I didn't think anyone would actually care about a joke, then you're even more naive than I thought." His free hand came up, fingers catching her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. "And far more dangerous to yourself than I can allow." The murmurs started the moment Alvaro's hand closed around her wrist and he turned, pulling her through the crowd with the kind of quiet authority that made even Milan's wealthiest collectors part like water. Jennifer stumbled in her heels, catalog slipping from her fingers. "Mr. Cremonesi, I can walk on my own, can you?" His voice was ice over steel, never looking back. "Because your judgment tonight suggests otherwise." The auction hall's ornate doors swung open ahead of them, held by men in dark suits who materialized from nowhere. Jennifer caught a glimpse of their faces, blank, professional, the kind of controlled neutrality that spoke of training and violence held on a careful leash. Outside, the night air hit her like a slap. Milan's glittering streets stretched before them, but Alvaro didn't slow. A black car idled at the curb, engine purring, rear door already open. "Get in." It wasn't a request. Jennifer's defiance flared hot in her chest. "I have a right to know what's happening. You can't just drag me out of." He moved so fast she barely registered it. One moment she was standing on the sidewalk, the next her back was against the car, Alvaro's body caging her in, his hands braced on either side of her head. Up close, she could see the fury written in every line of his face, the tight set of his jaw, the dark fire in his eyes, the barely controlled tension vibrating through his frame. "You have a right?" His voice dropped to something dangerous, intimate. "You forfeited your rights the moment you made yourself a target." "I told you, it was a joke. Enzo Calabrese doesn't joke, Jennifer." Her name on his lips sent an unwanted shiver down her spine. He'd never used it before, always maintaining that careful distance with Miss Hawkins. "And the 12 men who heard you certainly weren't laughing. Do you have any idea what you just did?" She lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated even as her heart hammered. "Apparently, I made you angry enough to manhandle me in front of half of Milan's elite." Something flickered in his expression, raw, unguarded for just a second before the control slammed back down. "Get in the car. Now. Or I will put you in it myself." The certainty in his voice told her he absolutely would. Jennifer slid into the leather interior, and Alvaro followed immediately, the door closing with a heavy thunk that sounded too much like a cell door locking. The driver pulled away from the curb without a word. Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Jennifer pressed herself against the opposite door, suddenly acutely aware of how much space Alvaro took up, how the confined space amplified everything about him, the expensive scent of his cologne, the controlled power in every movement, the way his rolled shirt sleeves revealed forearms corded with tension. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere you can't make any more catastrophically stupid decisions." He didn't look at her, staring out the window as Milan's lights blurred past. "I work for you," Jennifer said, forcing steadiness into her voice. "I'm a historian on a restoration project. Nothing about that gives you the right to, you don't work for me." His head turned, and the look he gave her was almost pitying. "You never did." "Not really." Ice slid down her spine. "What does that mean?" "It means the restoration project is real, but it was never why you're here." Alvaro's hand moved to his tie, loosening it with sharp, angry movements. "It means I've been keeping you safe for 3 months, and you just destroyed every careful protection I put in place with one reckless sentence." "Safe from what?" "From men like Enzo. From my world." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for the first time she saw something other than control in his expression, something raw and almost anguished. "From me." Jennifer's breath caught. "I don't understand." "I know you don't. That's the problem." He ran a hand through his dark hair, disrupting its usual perfect style. "You see Enzo Calabrese as just another arrogant man at an auction. You don't see the capo who controls half the smuggling routes in northern Italy. You don't see the man who would take your joke as a genuine offer and act on it before the night was over." "He wouldn't, he would." Alvaro's voice cut through her protest like a blade. "And when I stopped him, which I would have, it would have started a war that's been barely contained for 2 years. All because you couldn't keep your defiance in check for one evening." The weight of his words settled over her like a shroud. Jennifer's mind raced, pieces clicking together that she'd been deliberately ignoring. The armed guards. The way people deferred to Alvaro with a fear that went beyond respect. The meetings held behind closed doors that she was never privy to. "You're not a businessman," she whispered. "I am. Among other things." His gaze locked on hers, and she saw the truth there, dark, dangerous, absolute. "But primarily, I'm the head of the Cremonesi syndicate. And you, Jennifer Hawkins, are under my protection whether you knew it or not." "Why?" The question came out smaller than she intended. "Why would I need protection from people like you?" Something shifted in his expression, a flash of old pain quickly buried. "Because I made a promise to your mother before she died." The world tilted. "My mother? You knew my mother?" "She came to Milan 15 years ago, running from a man who would have killed her. I gave her sanctuary. I kept her safe." His voice gentled almost imperceptibly. "And when she was dying, she asked me to watch over her daughter if you ever came to Italy. To keep you far away from my world while still keeping you protected." Jennifer's throat tightened. She never mentioned she wouldn't have. That was the point. Alvaro's jaw clenched again, anger returning. "I gave you legitimate work. Kept you at arm's length. Made sure you stayed in the safe, academic world where you belonged. And tonight, You stepped out of that protection and painted a target on yourself that I can't erase. The car slowed, turning through tall iron gates. So what happens now? Jennifer asked, hating how her voice shook. Alvaro's eyes held hers, dark and possessive and filled with something that made her breath catch for entirely different reasons. Now you stay with me. Close. Where I can see you and protect you properly. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Because the only thing more dangerous than Enzo Calabrese thinking he has a claim on you is the truth. What truth? His hand reached out, fingers brushing her cheek with unexpected gentleness that contradicted everything about the fury still simmering beneath his surface. That I've wanted you from the moment you walked into my office 3 months ago. And after tonight, after watching him touch you, speak to you like that. The possessive fire in his eyes burned. I'm done pretending I don't. The safe house wasn't what Jennifer expected. No sterile apartment or hidden bunker. Instead, Alvaro led her through the entrance of an elegant townhouse tucked behind a private courtyard, all honey-colored stone and wrought iron balconies that spoke of old Milan money. This is temporary, he said, his hand still at the small of her back, a touch that had shifted from forceful to protective somewhere during the car ride. Until I assess the situation properly. Jennifer pulled away from his touch the moment they crossed the threshold, needing distance, needing air, needing her world to stop spinning. You can't just say something like that and expect me to sit down. He gestured to the plush sofa in the living room. We're going to talk. Properly. I don't want to sit. She whirled on him, 3 months of careful politeness and professional distance evaporating. I want answers. Real ones. You knew my mother? You made her promises? What does any of that have to do with me? Alvaro's control was back in place, that impenetrable mask he wore like armor. He moved to a sideboard, poured 2 glasses of amber liquid without asking if she wanted one. Your mother's name was Catherine Hawkins. Before that, Catherine Russo. Jennifer's breath caught. Russo was her maiden name. She never used it. She always said that her family was dead. Yes. He turned, offering her the glass. When she didn't take it, he set it on the coffee table. They weren't dead. They were dangerous. That's impossible. My mother was a literature professor. She lived in Boston. She had nothing to do with. Jennifer gestured helplessly at the obvious wealth surrounding them at him. With any of this. She had everything to do with this. Alvaro took a slow sip of his drink, and she watched his throat work, fascinated against her will by this man who'd just upended her entire understanding of her life. Catherine Russo was born in Calabria. Her father ran a small operation, gambling, protection. Nothing significant by syndicate standards. But when she was 23, she witnessed something. A killing. A betrayal within the organization. The room felt too warm suddenly. Jennifer sank onto the sofa without meaning to. The men involved wanted her silenced. Your mother ran. She made it to Milan with nothing but a bag and terror in her eyes. His gaze grew distant, remembering. She came to my father first. He was head of the family then. But he was dying and the decision fell to me. You would have been 26. Newly in control of an empire I'd been trained for since birth. A bitter smile touched his lips. Your mother threw herself on my mercy. Begged for sanctuary. She was willing to trade information for protection. Jennifer's hands clenched in her lap. What information? Names. Dates. Details of the operation that wanted her dead. Alvaro set his glass down with careful precision. It was valuable enough that I made the call. I gave her new documents, a new identity, money to start over. She chose America. Boston, a university position far from anything that could touch her. She never told me any of this. Jennifer's voice came out raw. Not once. I grew up thinking she was just normal. That we were normal. That's what she wanted. What I promised her. He moved closer, and this time when he sat beside her on the sofa, she didn't pull away. She built a good life there. Safe. Clean. She had you. And then she got sick. The memory still hurt, even after 5 years. Ovarian cancer, aggressive and merciless. She contacted me when she got the diagnosis. Asked me to look after you if you ever came to Italy. Alvaro's voice gentled. She said you'd inherited her love of history, of art. That someday you might be drawn here for research or work. She wanted me to make sure you stayed safe if that happened. Jennifer looked up at him, this dangerous man who'd kept a promise to a dying woman he'd helped decades ago. The restoration project is real. The documents you've been cataloging are genuine 15th century manuscripts that needed expert attention. He held her gaze. But when your application came through one of my legitimate companies 3 months ago, I recognized your name immediately. I made sure you were hired. Made sure you were given work that kept you in archives and libraries, away from anything that might expose you to my world. You were watching me. Always. No apology in his voice, just fact. Making sure you were safe. That no one connected you to Catherine Russo. That you could do your work and return to America without ever knowing the truth. Jennifer's mind reeled. Every interaction with him over the past 3 months took on new meaning, the careful distance he'd maintained, the way he'd never attended social events where she was present, the armed security she'd thought was normal for a wealthy businessman. Then why did you bring me to that auction tonight? The question came out sharper than she intended. Something flickered in his expression, guilt, maybe, or frustration. Because Enzo has been pushing boundaries. Testing me. I needed to show strength, solidarity with the other families. I thought. He ran a hand through his hair again. That gesture of frustration she was learning meant his control was slipping. I thought having you there, my brilliant historian consulting on a rare manuscript acquisition, would reinforce my legitimate business interests. Keep you in plain sight where I could watch you while showing the syndicate I had nothing to hide. You used me as cover. I protected you while managing a delicate political situation. His jaw tightened. And it would have worked if Enzo hadn't decided to provoke me by approaching you. If you hadn't given him a response that made you lose your mind. Jennifer's defiance sparked back to life. You grabbed me in front of everyone. You might as well have announced I was yours. You're mine. The words hung between them, raw and possessive and completely honest. Jennifer should have been angry. Should have been terrified. Instead, heat unfurled low in her belly, dangerous and unwanted. You don't own me because you made a promise to my mother. No. Alvaro leaned closer, his hand coming up to cup her face with unexpected tenderness. I don't own you because of a promise. But I will protect you because of one. And I will claim you because from the moment you walked into my office, looked me in the eye without fear, and challenged my assessment of a forged document, I haven't been able to think of anything else. Her breath caught. You said I was wrong about that manuscript. You were right. I was testing you. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. You passed. Spectacularly. And I've been fighting this ever since. Fighting what? This. His mouth crashed against hers, all the control and distance he'd maintained for 3 months shattering in an instant. Jennifer should have pulled away, should have slapped him. Instead, her hands fisted in his white shirt, and she kissed him back with equal fury, 3 months of confused tension and unwanted attraction igniting between them like wildfire. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alvaro rested his forehead against hers. I promised your mother I'd keep you safe, he said roughly. I'm breaking that promise by wanting you. By keeping you here. By not letting you go. Jennifer's fingers tightened in his shirt. Then break it. His eyes darkened. You don't know what you're asking. Then tell me. No more secrets. No more protection. She met his gaze steadily. If I'm already in danger because of tonight, then I deserve to know everything. Alvaro studied her for a long moment, and she saw the war playing out behind his eyes, duty versus desire, protection versus possession. Finally, he nodded. Everything. But once you know, Jennifer, there's no going back to your old life. Maybe I don't want to go back. His hand tightened on her face, possessive and claiming. Then welcome to my world, Tesoro. God help us both. The villa sat nestled in the hills outside Milan, surrounded by cypress trees and walls high enough to keep the world at bay. Dawn was breaking as they arrived, painting the Lombardy countryside in shades of rose and gold that would have been beautiful if Jennifer's nerves weren't wound tight as wire. This is where you're keeping me? She stepped out of the car, taking in the sprawling Renaissance structure that looked more like a fortress than a home. This is where you'll be safe. Alvaro's voice was rough with exhaustion, though his posture remained ramrod straight. He'd been making calls throughout the tower drive, his rapid Italian too quick for her limited understanding, but the tension in each word had been unmistakable. Inside, the villa was all old-world elegance, frescoed ceilings, marble floors, furniture that belonged in museums. A housekeeper appeared as if summoned by telepathy, older woman with kind eyes who didn't seem remotely surprised by their pre-dawn arrival. "Maria will show you to your room," Alvaro said, already moving toward what looked like an office. "Get some rest. We'll talk later." "No." Jennifer's voice cut through the foyer with unexpected force. "We'll talk now." He stopped, shoulders tensing. "You need sleep. What I need are answers. Real ones, not the carefully edited version you gave me at the safe house." She crossed her arms, channeling every bit of stubborn determination that had gotten her through doctoral work and academic politics. "You don't get to kiss me like that, and then retreat behind your walls again." Alvaro turned slowly, and the look he gave her was dangerous. "You want honesty? Fine. But not here." He gestured to Maria, dismissed her with a few quiet words, then grabbed Jennifer's wrist. "Come with me." He led her through corridors and up a stone staircase to a private wing of the villa. The room he pulled her into was clearly his masculine, minimal, dominated by a massive bed and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the hills. The door closed behind them with a finality that made her heart race. "You want to know why I'm keeping you here?" He stalked toward her, and she fought the urge to back away. "Why I reacted the way I did when Enzo touched you?" "Yes. Because I've been restraining myself for 3 months." His voice was low, controlled fury barely leashed. 3 months of watching you bent over ancient manuscripts in my archive, your hair falling forward, completely absorbed. 3 months of late-night meetings where you challenged my opinions, argued with me about provenance and authenticity like I was just another scholar instead of a man who could destroy you with a word. Jennifer's breath quickened. "You never showed any interest. You barely looked at me." I looked. He was close enough now that she could feel the heat radiating from him. "Every time you left my office, I looked. Every time you laughed with the archive staff or got excited about some obscure historical detail, I looked. And every single time, I reminded myself of the promise I made to your mother. That promise didn't stop you from bringing me to that auction. No, because I'm not as honorable as I pretend to be." His hand came up, fingers threading through her hair with possession that sent shivers down her spine. "I told myself I was protecting you by keeping you visible and legitimate. The truth? I wanted you there. Wanted to see you in that dress, surrounded by my world, close enough to touch. Alvaro, I've wanted you since the day you walked into my office." The confession tore out of him like it had been held back too long. "Since you looked at me with those sharp eyes and told me my authentication methods were outdated. Since you smiled at something you read and forgot I was even in the room. Since you existed in my space and made me feel something other than cold calculation for the first time in years." Jennifer's hands found his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath the expensive fabric. "Then why the distance? Why pretend you didn't care? Because caring about you puts you in danger." His other hand cupped her face, tilting it up to his. "Because men like Enzo will use anything I care about as a weapon. Because your mother trusted me to keep you safe, and wanting you the way I do is the opposite of safe. Maybe I don't want safe." The words came out breathless. "Maybe I want the truth. The real you, not the careful mask you show everyone else." Something in his expression cracked. "You don't know what you're asking for. Then show me." He made a sound low in his throat, somewhere between surrender and victory, and then his mouth was on hers with devastating precision. This wasn't like the urgent, almost angry kiss at the safe house. This was deliberate, consuming, a claiming that made her knees weak and her fingers clutch at his shoulders for balance. Jennifer kissed him back with equal fervor, 3 months of confused tension and unwanted attraction finally making sense. Every time he dismissed her from his office a little too quickly. Every moment his gaze had lingered on her before he looked away. Every careful word that maintained distance while his eyes promised something else entirely. His hands moved to her waist, pulling her flush against him, and she could feel the restraint vibrating through his frame, the leashed power of a dangerous man trying not to lose control completely. "This is a mistake," he murmured against her lips, even as his hands tightened possessively. "Probably." Jennifer's fingers moved to his collar, undoing the top button. "Are you going to stop?" "No." His forehead pressed against hers, breathing ragged. "But I need you to understand what this means. If you stay here with me, if we do this, you're choosing my world. The danger. The secrets. All of it. I'm choosing you." She met his dark eyes steadily. "Not your world. Not your promise to my mother. You." The last thread of his control snapped. He lifted her effortlessly, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her to the bed. But instead of following her down, he braced himself above her, drinking in the sight of her sprawled across his sheets with an intensity that made her burn. "Say it again," he commanded softly. "I choose you, Alvaro Cremonesi." She reached up, pulling him down to her. Mafia boss and all. His smile was dark and possessive and absolutely devastating. "Then you're mine, Jennifer Hawkins. And I don't let go of what's mine." This kiss was different, slower, deeper, a promise sealed with heat and want, and something that felt dangerously close to inevitability. When they finally broke apart, dawn light was streaming through the windows, illuminating the new reality they'd just created. Alvaro traced her swollen lips with his thumb, his expression fierce. "No more running. No more distance. You stay by my side where I can protect you properly. And where you can keep an eye on me?" She raised an eyebrow, some of her natural defiance returning. "That too." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, unexpectedly tender. "Welcome to the Villa, Tesoro. For however long it takes to end this threat, this is home." Jennifer looked around the bedroom, his bedroom, and felt the weight of her choice settling over her. No going back to her simple life cataloging manuscripts and teaching. No pretending she didn't know what Alvaro really was. But as his arms tightened around her and his lips found hers again, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Some risks were worth taking. Some dangerous men were worth choosing. And Alvaro Cremonesi, she was learning, was absolutely both. Will Jennifer's choice to embrace Alvaro's world protect her, or make her an even bigger target? Drop your theories below and subscribe for what happens next. Jennifer woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the scent of espresso. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't place where she was, then memory flooded back. The villa. Alvaro's confession. The kiss that had rewired her understanding of everything. She was alone in the massive bed, still fully clothed from last night. A note sat on the pillow beside her in sharp, elegant handwriting. "Breakfast on the terrace. We have work to do." The terrace turned out to be a stone expanse overlooking manicured gardens and rolling hills, with a table set for two. Alvaro stood at the balustrade, phone to his ear, his Italian rapid and commanding. He'd changed into dark slacks and a crisp shirt, sleeves already rolled to his forearms despite the early hour. He ended the call as she approached, his gaze sweeping over her with an intensity that made her hyper-aware of her rumpled dress and sleep-mussed hair. "You should have slept longer. Hard to sleep when my entire world has been turned upside down." She accepted the espresso he poured, grateful for something to do with her hands. "That note said we have work to do?" "Yes." He gestured for her to sit, taking the chair across from her. "If you're staying in my world, you need to understand how it works. The rules that keep you alive." The bluntness of it sent a chill through her despite the warm morning. "I thought staying here kept me safe." "Safer. Not safe." Alvaro's expression was serious, the passionate man from last night replaced by someone harder, more calculating. "Enzo knows you're important to me now. That makes you valuable, as leverage, as a target, as a statement. You need to know how to navigate that." Jennifer set down her cup carefully. "So teach me." Over the next hour, as they ate pastries and fruit that Maria brought out, Alvaro gave her a crash course in survival. He explained the syndicate's structure, families and alliances, territories and tributes, the delicate balance of power that kept Milan from descending into open warfare. "Loyalty is everything," he said, refilling her espresso. "Not just to me, but to the concept itself. If someone within the organization thinks you're disloyal, thinks you might betray confidences or switch allegiances, you become a liability. Liabilities get eliminated. That's barbaric. That's survival." No apology in his voice. These men don't trust easily, and they don't forgive betrayal. You'll meet members of my inner circle eventually. They'll be watching you, assessing whether you're a weakness I can't afford. And if they decide I am? His eyes darkened. Then they'll learn what happens when someone threatens what's mine. The possessiveness should have frightened her. Instead, it sent heat curling through her belly. Jennifer pushed the reaction aside, focusing on the information he was giving her. What else? Trust no one completely except me. Alvaro leaned back, studying her. Even people who seem friendly, who offer help or information. In my world, everyone has an agenda. Learn to read the angles. How? Watch their eyes when they talk to you. Listen for what they're not saying. He demonstrated, his gaze going sharp and assessing. Right now, you're nervous, but trying to hide it. Your hands keep moving to your cup when you're uncertain. You lean forward when something interests you and back when you're uncomfortable. Jennifer forced herself to still, unsettled by how accurately he'd read her. Don't. His hand covered hers. Don't hide your tells from me. I need to know what you're thinking, what you're feeling. But with everyone else, learn to control them. A blank face can save your life. They spent the rest of the morning on the terrace, Alvaro coaching her through scenarios. How to respond if someone asked about their relationship. Never confirm, never deny, deflect with grace. How to handle veiled threats, acknowledge without showing fear. How to identify security risks in a room, exits, armed personnel, people who watched too carefully. You're treating this like spy training, Jennifer said finally, her head spinning with information. I'm treating this like keeping you alive. Alvaro stood, pulling her to her feet. Come. Next lesson. He led her through the villa to a room she hadn't seen before, an office that was clearly his command center. Monitors showed security feeds from multiple locations. A desk held phones and laptops with encryption she didn't recognize. Maps of Milan covered one wall, marked with symbols and notations. This is what I actually do, he said, gesturing to the controlled chaos. The legitimate businesses fund the organization and provide cover. But this is power. Information. Control. Jennifer moved closer to the maps, recognizing street names and landmarks. These marks, their territories? Quick study. Approval colored his voice. Red is Cremonesi. Blue is Calabrese. Yellow is the Santoro family. They're neutral but shifting. Green is smaller operations we have agreements with. There's a lot of blue. Enzo has been expanding. Aggressive acquisitions, both of territory and businesses. He's challenging the established order. Alvaro's jaw tightened. Using you to get to me is just his latest move. So what do? The we made something flash in his eyes, satisfaction, possessiveness, approval. We remind him why challenging me is a mistake. But first, you need to be able to walk into a room of dangerous men without showing fear. For the next 2 hours, Alvaro drilled her mercilessly. He had her practice entering rooms with confidence, maintaining eye contact without aggression, responding to provocations with cool deflection instead of her natural defiance. Your instinct is to fight back, he said after she'd snapped at a hypothetical insult for the 3rd time. That's admirable but dangerous. These men respect strength, but they'll exploit emotional reactions. So I'm supposed to just take it? You're supposed to be smart about when to push back. He stepped closer, cupping her face. Save the fire for when it matters. For when it protects you instead of paints a target. Jennifer leaned into his touch despite her frustration. This is exhausting. I know. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. But you're doing well. Better than I expected. What did you expect? That you'd run screaming within the first hour. A slight smile softened his features. Instead, you're analyzing syndicate politics and asking strategic questions. Your mother would be proud. The mention of her mother sent a pang through her chest. Would she? I'm pretty sure diving headfirst into the world she ran from isn't what she wanted for me. No, Alvaro's honesty was brutal but appreciated. She wanted you safe, far from all this. But she also raised a woman strong enough to survive it. That counts for something. They broke for lunch on the terrace again, the afternoon sun warm and the gardens peaceful, a stark contrast to the morning's intense education. Jennifer watched Alvaro as he took a call, noticing the subtle shift in his posture, the way his voice changed depending on who he was speaking to. He was a chameleon, she realized, showing different faces to different people. She wondered which face was real, or if they all were pieces of a complicated man shaped by violence and power. When he ended the call, she asked the question burning in her mind. "Last night, when you kissed me, was that real? Or another strategy?" His expression went dangerous. "Everything else in my life might be strategy, Jennifer. But not that. Never that." He proved it by kissing her right there, in broad daylight, with security cameras and staff who could walk by at any moment. Proved it with the way his hands trembled slightly when they framed her face, with the desperation underlying the desire. When they finally broke apart, Jennifer's carefully learned composure was in tatters. "That's not fair. You spend all morning teaching me control and then I remind you that with me, you don't need it." His forehead pressed to hers. "The control is for them. For the world out there. Here, with me, you can be exactly who you are." It was the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to her, wrapped in danger and possession and brutal honesty. "So what now?" she asked. "Now you rest. Tomorrow, we continue." His arms tightened around her. "And soon, very soon, I introduce you properly to my world. But this time, you'll be ready." Jennifer thought about the maps and the territories, the rules and the threats, the careful balance of a world built on violence and loyalty. She thought about Alvaro's hands on her, his confession, his promise to protect her. And she realized that, ready or not, she was already in too deep to ever find her way back out. 3 days at the villa had transformed Jennifer's understanding of everything, but it hadn't brought her any closer to understanding Alvaro himself. He was generous with information about his world, patient with her questions about syndicate politics, attentive to her safety. But the man behind the boss remained carefully guarded, revealing nothing of himself beyond what he'd confessed that first night. She found him in his office after midnight, surrounded by papers and the glow of multiple screens. He'd shed his jacket hours ago, his shirt wrinkled and tie discarded. The sight of him like this, disheveled and exhausted, made her heart clench with unexpected tenderness. "You should be sleeping," he said without looking up. "So should you." Jennifer closed the door behind her, leaning against it. "But here we both are." His gaze lifted, something flickering in those dark eyes. "I have work to finish." "You always have work to finish." "It's an excuse." She moved into the room, emboldened by the late hour and the shadows that made truth easier. "You're keeping me at arm's length again." "I'm keeping you safe." "No. You're keeping me informed, protected, trained. But you're not letting me in." Jennifer stopped at the edge of his desk. "The past 3 days, you've taught me everything about your world. But nothing about you." Alvaro's jaw tightened. "What I've told you is enough." "For what? For me to survive your world?" "Maybe. But not for this." She gestured between them. "Not for whatever this is becoming. Jennifer, you said I could be myself with you. That I didn't need the control and the masks with you." Her voice was steady despite her racing heart. "But you're still wearing yours. Still keeping walls between us." He stood abruptly, moving to the windows that overlooked the darkened gardens. "Those walls exist for a reason." "I know. Because caring makes you vulnerable. Because in your world, vulnerability gets exploited." She followed him, refusing to let him retreat. "But I'm already a vulnerability, Alvaro. You made that clear when you claimed me in front of Enzo. So those walls? They're not protecting either of us anymore." His shoulders tensed, the only sign her words had landed. "What do you want from me?" "The truth. The real you, not the careful version." Jennifer took a breath, making herself vulnerable first. "I'll start. You want to know why I really came to Milan?" He turned, surprise flickering across his features. "It wasn't just for the research opportunity, though that was part of it." Her fingers twisted together, old pain surfacing. "After my mother died, I felt lost. Unmoored. She was all I had, and when she was gone, I realized I didn't know who I was beyond being her daughter. So I ran. Took the first prestigious position that would get me far from Boston and all the memories." "You were running from grief," Alvaro said quietly. "I was running from emptiness. From the terrifying realization that I'd built my entire life around one person, and without her, I had nothing. The confession hurt, but also relieved. No real friends because I was always too focused on academics. No relationships because I never let anyone get close enough. Just work and research and the safe distance of historical figures who couldn't hurt me. Understanding dawned in his expression. And then you walked into my world and found something that made you feel alive again. I found you. Jennifer held his gaze. Someone as guarded and isolated as I was. Someone who understood what it meant to keep people at a distance to protect yourself. Alvaro was quiet for a long moment, the only sound the ticking of an antique clock on the mantel. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. My father raised me to be a weapon. Emotions were weaknesses to be eliminated. Connections were liabilities to be minimized. That's horrible. That's effective. He turned back to the window. By the time I was 16, I could negotiate territory disputes and spot betrayal before it happened. I was the perfect heir, cold, calculating, ruthless when necessary. And lonely, Jennifer added softly. His shoulders stiffened. Loneliness is a small price for survival. Is it? She moved closer, close enough to feel his warmth. Or is it just another kind of death? Slower, but just as final. You don't understand what it's like in my position. Trust the wrong person, and you end up with a knife in your back. Show weakness, and your enemies circle like sharks. His hands braced against the window frame. I've seen what happens to men in my world who let their hearts rule their heads. They get destroyed, and everyone they care about gets destroyed with them. So you've spent your entire life never letting anyone in. Never allowing yourself to want anything beyond power and control. Jennifer's hand found his back, feeling the tension coiled there. That's not strength, Alvaro. That's prison. He spun to face her, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole her breath. And what happens when I let you in completely? When I give you the power to destroy me and my enemies notice? What happens when Enzo or the next challenger decides the best way to break me is through you? Then we face it together. She cupped his face, forcing him to hold her gaze. You've been teaching me to survive your world. Let me teach you something, you don't have to survive it alone. Jennifer, when my mother was dying, she told me something. She said the only regret she had was letting fear keep her from living fully, from trusting people, from building the life she really wanted. Tears pricked Jennifer's eyes. I didn't understand it then. I thought she'd built a good life, a safe one, but now I realized she was talking about this, about whatever happened to her here in Italy that made her run. She let fear win, and she regretted it until the day she died. Alvaro's thumb caught the tear that slipped down her cheek. She ran to protect you. And I'm choosing to stay. Not despite the danger, but because the alternative, walking away from you, from this, would be its own kind of death. She pressed her hand over his heart, feeling it thunder beneath her palm. So stop protecting me from yourself. Stop holding back because you think it makes me safer. It doesn't. It just makes us both alone. Something in him cracked. She saw it happen, the carefully maintained walls fracturing, the control he wielded like armor finally failing. He pulled her against him with a desperation that bordered on violence, his face buried in her hair. I don't know how to do this, he confessed roughly. How to want someone this much, and not let it destroy everything. We figure it out together. Jennifer's arms wrapped around him, holding tight. That's what people do when they care about each other. They figure it out. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other and the darkness, walls finally breached. When Alvaro pulled back, his expression was raw and open in a way she'd never seen. I was 12 when my father killed a man in front of me, he said quietly. Not in anger or defense, as a lesson. To show me that hesitation and mercy were luxuries we couldn't afford. I threw up after, and he made me clean it up myself while the body was still there. Jennifer's heart broke for the boy he'd been. He said if I wanted to lead, I had to be harder than everyone else. Colder. More willing to do what others wouldn't. Alvaro's hands trembled slightly where they rested on her waist. So I became that. I buried everything soft and turned myself into exactly what he wanted. And it worked. I took control of the family at 26 and expanded our power beyond anything he'd achieved. But you were miserable, Jennifer said. I was effective. Misery wasn't relevant. He stroked her hair with unexpected gentleness. Until you. Until I had something in my life that made me remember what it felt like to want more than just survival and power. What do you want? She whispered. His forehead pressed to hers. You. A life that isn't just strategy and violence. Mornings where I wake up next to you instead of alone. A future that's more than just the next territorial negotiation. His voice dropped lower. Everything I taught myself not to want because wanting it made it a weapon someone could use against me. Then take it. Jennifer's hands framed his face. Take me. Take the risk. Because I'm already all in, Alvaro. I'm not walking away. He kissed her then, and it was different from every kiss before, not desperate or claiming or controlled, but honest. Raw and vulnerable and absolutely real. They ended up on the leather sofa in his office, wrapped around each other, sharing secrets until dawn painted the sky in shades of rose. He told her about his mother, who died when he was 8 and taken the last softness in his father with her. She told him about the loneliness of academic success that never quite filled the void. He confessed his fear that loving her would get her killed. She admitted her terror that he'd push her away to keep her safe. No more walls, Jennifer said as the sun rose, her head on his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. No more running, Alvaro countered, his arms tightening around her. It was a promise and a risk and possibly the most dangerous thing either of them had ever done. But as they watched the dawn break over the Lombardy hills, neither of them could bring themselves to regret it. Some walls were worth breaking. Some risks were worth everything. Can love truly survive in a world built on violence, or will their vulnerability become their downfall? What do you think happens next? Comment below. The call came at 3 in the afternoon, shattering the fragile peace of the villa. Jennifer was in the library, finally indulging in some actual historical research, when she heard Alvaro's voice from the hallway, sharp, cold, the dangerous boss instead of the vulnerable man who'd held her through the night. She found him in his office, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand braced on the desk. The tension in his shoulders made her stomach drop. How many casualties? A pause. Get them to the private clinic. I want a full security review within the hour. Another pause, his jaw clenching. No. Let them think they succeeded. I'll handle this my way. He ended the call and stood there, silent and lethal. What happened? Jennifer asked from the doorway. Enzo made his move. Alvaro's voice was carefully controlled, which somehow made it more frightening. He hit one of my legitimate holdings, an art gallery in the city center. Sent his men in during business hours with guns and a message. Her blood ran cold. Was anyone hurt? 2 security personnel. They'll live. His hands flexed at his sides. The message was clear enough. He's escalating, testing how far he can push before I respond. What was the message? Alvaro turned to face her, and the fury in his eyes was banked but burning. That hiding pretty things in villas doesn't make them safe. That I can't protect what's mine by keeping it locked away. Jennifer's breath caught. He knows I'm here. He knows you're somewhere under my protection. This was his way of saying nowhere is truly safe, that he can reach anything I care about whenever he wants. Alvaro moved to the windows, his control barely holding. He's right. As long as we're in this standoff, as long as I'm reacting instead of acting, you'll always be a target. So, what are you going to do? End it. He pulled out his phone, began making calls with cold precision. Marco, call a meeting. Inner Circle plus Santaro and his advisors. Tomorrow night, the estate. A pause. Yes, invite Calabrese. It's time we settled this properly. Jennifer watched him make 3 more calls, each one brief and commanding, the machinery of his power moving into action with terrifying efficiency. When he finished, he turned back to her. I need you to listen carefully. Tomorrow night, I'm calling a formal meeting of the syndicate leadership. It's the equivalent of drawing a line in the sand, forcing everyone to choose sides and respect the outcome. You're bringing me. It wasn't a question. Yes. His expression was unreadable. No more hiding. No more pretending you're not important to me. I'm making a formal declaration of your status, which means everyone, including Enzo, will have to accept it or openly challenge me. The weight of what he was proposing settled over her. And if he challenges you, then we'll have our answer about whether this ends in negotiation or war. Alvaro crossed to her, his hands finding her shoulders. I won't lie to you, Jennifer. Tomorrow night is dangerous. I'm putting you in a room with men who would happily use you as leverage if they thought they could get away with it. But it's the only way to establish you as untouchable, to make it clear that harming you means going to war with the entire Cremonesi family, not just me. You're using me to make a power play. I'm protecting you the only way I know how in this world. His grip tightened. By making you too valuable, too protected, too integral to my position for anyone to dare touch you. Once I make that declaration, you won't be a vulnerability anymore. You'll be an asset, a partner. Attacking you becomes attacking the family itself. Jennifer processed this, her historian's mind analyzing the political implications. It's brilliant, actually. You're turning their perception of me as your weakness into a demonstration of strength. Exactly. Pride flickered in his eyes. But it only works if you can hold your own in that room. If you show fear or uncertainty, they'll see it as proof that I'm compromised. That loving you makes me weak. Then I won't show fear. She straightened her shoulders, channeling everything he'd taught her over the past few days. What do I need to know? They spent the rest of the afternoon preparing. Alvaro explained the key players who would be present: Marco, his second-in-command and oldest friend; Luca, who controlled their financial operations; Antonio, head of security; and from outside families, Santoro, the neutral power broker whose support could sway the entire balance. Santoro is key, Alvaro said, showing her a photo of a silver-haired man with sharp eyes. He's old school, values tradition and respect. If he backs my claim on you, Enzo will have to accept it or risk alienating the established families. And if Santoro doesn't back you, then things get complicated. Alvaro's expression hardened. But I have leverage. Information about his operations that he'd prefer stayed private. He'll back me. That's blackmail. That's politics. No apology in his voice. In my world, you use every advantage you have. Sentiment and fairness get you killed. As the sun set, casting long shadows through the office, Alvaro pulled her close. I need to know you're certain about this. Once I make that declaration, there's no going back. You'll be marked as mine in a way that every family in northern Italy will recognize. Your old life, your academic career, your safety outside my protection, all of it ends tomorrow night. Jennifer thought about the library and quiet research, the comfortable predictability of university life. Thought about the woman she'd been just weeks ago, running from grief and emptiness. Then she looked at Alvaro, this dangerous man who'd finally let down his walls, who was risking everything to keep her safe in the only way his brutal world allowed. I'm certain, she said. But I need something from you. Anything. Promise me you won't make this declaration if it puts you at real risk. If standing by me threatens your position or starts a war you can't win, you let me go. Her voice stayed steady despite the pain the words caused. I won't be the reason you lose everything. Fury flashed across his features. You think I'd choose power over you? I think you've spent your whole life building this empire, and I won't let you destroy it for me. She cupped his face, forcing him to hear her. Promise me, Alvaro. If it comes down to it, you choose survival. No. He caught her hands, his grip almost painful. You don't understand. Without you, there is no empire worth protecting. There's just the same empty existence I had before, power without purpose, survival without living. His forehead pressed to hers. I choose you. Tomorrow night and every night after. That's not negotiable. The certainty in his voice undid her. Jennifer kissed him with everything she felt, fear and love and desperate hope that his confidence wasn't misplaced. That night, sleep eluded them both. They lay tangled together in his bed, watching shadows play across the ceiling, neither willing to voice their fears about what tomorrow would bring. Tell me what happens, Jennifer finally whispered. At the meeting. Step by step. Alvaro's arms tightened around her. We arrived together. Already that makes a statement. You're not hidden or separated from me. We enter the main hall at the estate, and I'll have you at my side, not behind me. Equal footing. That's significant? In my world? Absolutely. It says you're a partner, not property. His fingers traced patterns on her arm. I'll make the formal introduction, announce your status as my intended consort. Then I'll lay out exactly what that means, that you're under the family's protection, that harming you is equivalent to attacking me directly. And then we wait to see who accepts it and who challenges. His voice went cold. If Enzo is smart, he'll back down, acknowledge the claim, and move on. If he's not, war, Jennifer finished. Not immediately. First there would be negotiations, proxy conflicts, political maneuvering. But eventually, yes. War. He shifted, turning to face her in the darkness. Which is why I need you to trust me tomorrow. No matter what happens, no matter what's said, you stay calm and confident. Can you do that? Jennifer thought about everything she'd learned, everything she'd become since that night at the auction. Yes, I can do that. That's my girl. He kissed her forehead, tender despite the violence humming beneath his surface. Tomorrow, we change everything. As dawn approached, Jennifer realized she wasn't afraid of the meeting or the danger, or even the permanent transformation of her life. She was afraid of failing him, of being the weakness his enemies saw instead of the strength he believed in. But she'd faced down doctoral committees and academic rivals, had rebuilt herself after devastating loss. She could face down a room full of Mafia leaders. She had to, because walking away wasn't an option anymore, and neither was letting Alvaro face this alone. Tomorrow night, the world would learn that Jennifer Hawkins wasn't just some naive historian who'd stumbled into danger. She was Alvaro Cremonesi's chosen partner. And that meant she was just as dangerous as he was. The Cremonesi estate was everything Jennifer expected and nothing she was prepared for. The main house sprawled across manicured grounds like a Renaissance palace, all stone and grandeur and centuries of power made manifest. As their car pulled through iron gates flanked by armed guards, her heart hammered against her ribs. "Breathe," Alvaro said quietly, his hand finding hers. "You've got this." He dressed her carefully for this, a midnight blue dress that was elegant without being seductive, expensive without being ostentatious. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek style that kept her face visible, unobscured. Nothing to hide behind. "Remember," he continued as the car stopped before the entrance. "You are my equal in that room. Not my possession, not my vulnerability. My partner. That's the message we're sending." Jennifer nodded, drawing on every ounce of composure she'd learned. When Alvaro stepped out and extended his hand to her, she took it with confidence she didn't entirely feel. The entrance hall was magnificent, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, art that belonged in museums. But Jennifer barely registered it, too focused on the men gathered in the formal sitting room ahead. She counted 10, maybe 12, all in expensive suits, all watching their approach with varying degrees of curiosity and calculation. And there, near the fireplace with a glass of whiskey and that same predatory smile, stood Enzo Calabrese. His eyes lit with malicious amusement when he saw her. "Miss Hawkins. What a pleasant surprise. Capo Calabrese." She kept her voice neutral, her expression calm, even as her instincts screamed to step back from the man who'd started all this. Alvaro's hand pressed against the small of her back, reassurance and possession in one gesture. "Gentlemen, thank you for coming on short notice." They moved further into the room, and Jennifer recognized faces from Alvaro's briefings. Marco, the second in command, nodded to her with what might have been approval. Luca watched with sharp calculation. Antonio's expression was carefully blank. And Santoro, the silver-haired power broker, studied her with the intensity of a jeweler examining a questionable stone. "Shall we begin?" Alvaro gestured to the chairs arranged in a loose circle. It wasn't quite a boardroom, but the intent was clear formal negotiation, not casual discussion. Jennifer sat when Alvaro did, acutely aware of every eye on her. She kept her hands relaxed in her lap, her posture straight but not rigid. Confident. Equal. "I've called this meeting to address a matter of family importance." Alvaro's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Recent events have made it necessary to clarify certain relationships." Enzo's smile widened. "By all means, clarify. Miss Jennifer Hawkins is under my personal protection. More than that, she is my intended consort. The words fell into the room like stones into still water, ripples of reaction spreading across faces. I'm making this formal declaration before witnesses so there can be no confusion about her status. You're intended. Santoro leaned forward, his gaze assessing. That's a significant commitment, Alvaro. Particularly given Miss Hawkins' background. Her background is impeccable, Alvaro said coolly. Educated, intelligent, with family connections to our world that some of you may remember. Her mother was Catherine Russo, who was under this family's protection years ago. Jennifer felt the shift in the room, recognition, understanding, a reassessment of her value. Alvaro had just connected her to legitimate syndicate history, making her more than just a random civilian. Catherine Russo's daughter. Santoro sat back, something like respect entering his expression. I knew your mother, Miss Hawkins. A remarkable woman. She made a wise choice seeking Cremonesi protection. Thank you, Jennifer said, her voice steady. She spoke highly of the family. A lie, since her mother had never mentioned any of this, but a necessary one. Enzo set down his glass with deliberate care. This is all very touching, but let's address what we're really discussing. You're declaring Miss Hawkins off limits because I made her uncomfortable at an auction. Seems like an overreaction. The temperature in the room dropped. You didn't make her uncomfortable. Alvaro's voice went deadly quiet. You disrespected her, challenged my authority, and tested boundaries that should never have been in question. Then your people attacked my property in broad daylight. So no, Enzo. This isn't an overreaction. This is me drawing a line that should have been clear from the beginning. And if I don't accept this line? Enzo's casual tone didn't match the challenge in his eyes. Then you're declaring yourself an enemy of this family. Not just me, the entire Cremonesi organization. Alvaro leaned forward, and Jennifer saw the predator beneath the polish. Is that really what you want? Because we both know how that ends. The silence stretched, thick with tension and unspoken threats. Jennifer forced herself to remain still, to project calm confidence even as her heart raced. This was the moment where Enzo either backed down or escalated into something that couldn't be undone. Santoro cleared his throat. Perhaps we should clarify the specifics of this protection. What exactly are you proposing, Alvaro? That Jennifer be recognized as my formal partner. That she carries the protection and status of the Cremonesi name. That any action against her is treated as an action against me and answered accordingly. Alvaro's gaze swept the room. This isn't a request. It's a statement of fact. I'm simply ensuring everyone understands the implications. And what does Miss Hawkins bring to this arrangement? Luca asked, his tone carefully neutral. Beyond her personal appeal. It was a test, questioning her value, whether she was truly a partner or just a weakness dressed up in pretty words. Jennifer spoke before Alvaro could respond. I bring loyalty, discretion, and an understanding that this world operates on respect and consequences. I also bring skills that have already proven useful, historical expertise that's helped authenticate acquisitions and identify forgeries in your operations. She met Luca's eyes steadily. I'm not a liability pretending to be an asset. I'm a partner who understands exactly what that means. Approval flickered across several faces. Even Marco, who'd been carefully neutral, nodded slightly. Well said, Santoro murmured. It seems you've chosen wisely, Alvaro. I don't choose lightly. Alvaro's hand found Jennifer's, their fingers interlacing in full view of everyone. Jennifer is not a weakness. She is my intended, my partner, and soon, my wife. That makes her family. And we all know what happens to people who threaten family. The declaration hung in the air, absolute and binding. Jennifer felt the weight of it settle over her, no longer just a woman in danger, but a formal part of the Cremonesi power structure. Enzo stood, his movement drawing every eye. For a heart-stopping moment, Jennifer thought he would challenge, would push this into open conflict. Instead, he smiled, cold and calculating, but acknowledging defeat. Then congratulations are in order. To the happy couple. He raised his glass in a mocking toast. I hope she's worth the trouble she'll cause you, Alvaro. She's worth everything. No hesitation, no doubt. And anyone who suggests otherwise will learn exactly how much. The threat was clear, but the crisis had passed. Enzo had accepted the declaration, publicly and before witnesses. Anything he tried now would be open warfare, not political maneuvering. Santoro stood next, his movement carrying weight. I support this union. Catherine Russo's daughter deserves the protection this family can provide, and Alvaro deserves a partner who understands our world. He looked at Jennifer directly. Welcome to the family, Miss Hawkins. May you bring your intended the happiness he deserves. Thank you, Jennifer said, meaning it. I intend to. One by one, the others offered their acknowledgement, some genuine, some grudging, but all binding. By the time the meeting concluded an hour later, Jennifer's status had been established beyond question. As they returned to the car, Alvaro's hand never leaving hers, she felt the transformation complete. No longer the naive historian who'd stumbled into danger. No longer the outsider trying to understand a world she'd never belonged to. She was Jennifer Hawkins, intended consort of Alvaro Cremonesi. Protected, acknowledged, and dangerous in her own right. You were perfect, Alvaro said as the gates closed behind them. The way you handled Luca's challenge, the confidence you projected, you commanded that room. I had a good teacher. Jennifer leaned into him, exhaustion and relief hitting simultaneously. Is it really over? With Enzo. For now. He'll look for other angles, other ways to undermine me. But he can't use you anymore. You're untouchable. His arms tightened around her. You're mine, and everyone knows it. The possessiveness should have bothered her. Instead, it felt like safety, like belonging, like finally having a place in the world that was absolutely hers. Take me home, she whispered. Alvaro's smile was fierce and tender. Already there, tesoro. You've been home since the moment you chose to stay. And as the lights of the estate disappeared behind them, Jennifer realized he was right. Home wasn't the villa or Milan or even America anymore. Home was wherever Alvaro was. And she was never leaving. The villa was quiet when they returned, Maria having retired for the evening and the security team maintaining their watchful distance. Jennifer felt the shift the moment they crossed the threshold. The performance was over, the declarations made, and now it was just the two of them and the weight of everything that had changed. Alvaro released her hand to pour them both drinks, the familiar ritual grounding after the intensity of the meeting. But his movements were tight with residual tension, the adrenaline of the confrontation still humming beneath his surface. You don't have to hold it together anymore, Jennifer said quietly, accepting the glass of wine. It's just us now. His jaw clenched. I came very close to killing him tonight. When Enzo smiled at you like that, made that toast with that mocking tone, he set his glass down hard enough that liquid sloshed. I wanted to put a bullet in him right there. But you didn't. You stayed in control because that's what the situation required. She moved closer, drawn by the barely leashed violence radiating from him. That's what a true leader does. A true leader doesn't risk everything for one person. Alvaro's hands gripped the edge of the sideboard. That declaration tonight, I just painted the biggest target imaginable on both our backs. If anyone wants to challenge my authority, all they have to do is prove I'm compromised. That loving you makes me weak. Then we prove them wrong. Jennifer set her own glass aside and stepped into his space, her hands finding his chest. Together. Like we did tonight. He caught her wrists, his grip firm but not painful. You don't understand what you've committed to. That meeting was just the beginning. Now comes the reality, living in a world where every decision is calculated, where showing affection in public is a political statement, where our private life becomes everyone's business. I know. She held his gaze steadily. And I'm choosing it anyway. I'm choosing you. Why? The question burst out of him, raw and desperate. You could have walked away a dozen times. I gave you outs, showed you exactly how dangerous this is. Why would you choose this life? Choose me. Jennifer reached up, cupping his face with both hands, forcing him to see the truth in her eyes. Because for the first time since my mother died, I feel alive. Because you see me, not the degrees or the achievements or the careful academic mask, but me. The woman underneath who was lonely and lost and pretending she was fine. Her thumbs brushed his cheekbones. Because when I'm with you, I'm not running anymore. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Alvaro's control shattered. He pulled her against him with bruising force, his mouth crashing down on hers with all the pent-up emotion from the evening. This wasn't the careful claiming from before or the vulnerable honesty they'd shared in the darkness. This was raw need and desperate possession, and the breaking of the last barriers between them. Jennifer kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands fisting in his jacket, pulling him closer. She tasted his relief and his fear and his overwhelming desire, felt the tremor in his hands as they moved to her waist. "Tell me again," he demanded against her lips. "Tell me this is what you want." "This is what I want. You're what I want." She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "My choice is final and absolute, Alvaro. I'm not leaving. I'm not running. I'm yours." The last thread of his restraint snapped. He lifted her effortlessly, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her through the villa to his bedroom. Their bedroom now, she realized. Not a guest space or temporary sanctuary, but home. He set her down beside the bed with unexpected gentleness, despite the urgency vibrating through both of them. "If we do this, there's no going back. You understand that? I've been past the point of no return since you claimed me at that auction." Jennifer reached for the buttons of his shirt, her fingers steady despite her racing heart. "Since you confessed you wanted me. Since I realized I wanted you too, dangerous world and all." Alvaro caught her hands, stilling them. "I need you to know you're not just another possession to me. Not a trophy or a political asset or leverage to be used. He struggled with the words, this man who commanded empires but couldn't quite voice his own heart. "Everything," Jennifer finished softly. "You're everything to me too." His kiss was reverent this time, worshipful, like she was something precious he couldn't quite believe he was allowed to have. He undressed her with careful attention, each revealed inch of skin met with touches that made her breath catch. She returned the favor, learning the landscape of his body, the scars that told stories of violence survived, the tension that spoke of constant vigilance, the unexpected softness in how he held her. When they finally came together, it was with an intensity that stole her breath. Not just physical pleasure, though that was overwhelming, but something deeper, a recognition, a claiming that went both ways. She marked him as surely as he marked her, their bodies sealing a commitment their words had already made. Afterward, wrapped in tangled sheets with dawn still hours away, Alvaro held her like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. "I love you," he said into her hair, the confession barely audible but absolutely honest. "I don't know when it happened or how to protect you while feeling this, but I love you." Jennifer's throat tightened with emotion. "I love you too. Enough to stay. Enough to fight for this. Even when it gets hard. When the reality of my world becomes more than theoretical danger." His hand traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "When you have to watch me make decisions that horrify you. When you realize the man you love is capable of terrible things." "I already know you're capable of terrible things." She pressed a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. "I also know you're capable of incredible loyalty, of keeping promises even when they cost you, of letting someone in despite every instinct telling you it's dangerous." She lifted her head to meet his eyes. "I'm not naive, Alvaro. I know exactly who you are, and I choose you anyway." His arms tightened around her. "Then I'm the luckiest bastard in Italy." "You are." She smiled against his skin. "And I'm the luckiest woman. Even if my life did just become infinitely more complicated." Complicated is an understatement. But there was warmth in his voice now, the tension finally easing. "You're about to become the wife of a mafia boss. That comes with responsibilities, expectations, a whole new set of rules to navigate. Then teach me." Jennifer propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him. "Like you've been doing. I'll learn your world, stand by your side, be the partner you need. You already are." His hand came up to cup her face with heartbreaking tenderness. "Tonight proved that. The way you handled yourself in that meeting, the strength you showed, you were born for this, Tesoro. You just didn't know it yet." They made love again as the sky lightened, slower this time, savoring each touch and kiss and whispered promise. By the time they finally slept, Tangled together in the massive bed, the sun was painting the hills in shades of gold. And when Jennifer woke hours later to find Alvaro watching her with an expression of such profound contentment it transformed his usually severe features, she knew without question she'd made the right choice. This life wouldn't be easy. There would be danger and difficult decisions and moments when she questioned everything. But there would also be this, mornings waking up beside the man she loved, nights falling asleep in his arms, a partnership built on honesty and passion and choosing each other despite every obstacle. "What are you thinking?" Alvaro asked, his fingers trailing through her hair. "That I'm home." Jennifer smiled, the truth of it settling into her bones. Finally, completely home. His answering smile was fierce and possessive and absolutely hers. "Welcome home, my love. Welcome to our life." And as he pulled her close for another kiss, Jennifer knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Not as boss and protected asset, not as captor and captive, but as partners who'd chosen each other with open eyes and committed hearts. Some love stories were written in quiet domesticity. Theirs was written in danger and declarations, in broken walls and brutal honesty, in the choice to stand together against a world that would try to tear them apart. And Jennifer wouldn't have it any other way. Jennifer and Alvaro have sealed their bond, but will the syndicate truly accept her, or is this just the calm before the storm? Subscribe to see how their story ends. 3 weeks after the declaration, Jennifer sat in Alvaro's office reviewing acquisition documents for a collection of Renaissance manuscripts. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd come to Milan for historical research and ended up doing exactly that, just with the added complexity of ensuring none of the pieces were stolen or would create diplomatic incidents for the family. "The Medici letters are legitimate," she said, marking her notes. "Provenance checks out back to 1547. But the supposed Botticelli sketches?" She shook her head. "Clever forgeries, probably late 19th century. The paper's wrong." Marco, leaning against the doorway, let out a low whistle. "That's the third forgery you've caught this month. You just saved us €500,000. That's what I'm here for." Jennifer smiled, still getting used to the casual acceptance from Alvaro's inner circle. The past weeks had been a crash course in integration, learning faces and names, understanding the delicate politics of family business, proving her value beyond just being Alvaro's intended. "She's also here because I'd lose my mind without her," Alvaro said, entering the office with his phone still in hand. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head in passing, the casual affection still sending warmth through her. "Marco, what's the status on the Santoro shipment?" As the two men discussed logistics, Jennifer returned to her documents, half listening to the familiar rhythm of their business. This was her life now, mornings spent authenticating art and historical pieces, afternoons in meetings where she'd learned to read the subtext beneath polite conversation, evenings with Alvaro where they shed the armor of their public roles and just existed together. It wasn't the quiet academic life she'd imagined. It was infinitely better. "Jennifer." Alvaro's voice pulled her attention back. "We have dinner tonight at the main estate. Family gathering." She looked up, noting something in his expression she couldn't quite read. Formal or casual? Somewhere in between. His hand found her shoulder, squeezed gently. "Wear the emerald dress." The emerald dress was significant. Alvaro had given it to her last week, along with matching jewelry that had belonged to his mother. Wearing it made a statement about her status, her acceptance into the family legacy. "All right," she agreed, curiosity piqued. "Any particular reason for the dinner?" "You'll see." His smile was enigmatic, and Marco's poorly concealed grin suggested he was in on whatever was planned. That evening, as Jennifer descended the villa's main staircase in the emerald silk that hugged her curves and made her feel like Renaissance royalty, Alvaro was waiting at the bottom. The look in his eyes made her breath catch, possessive and proud, and something deeper that still made her heart race. "You're stunning," he said, offering his arm. "Ready? For what exactly?" "Trust me." He led her to the car, his hand never leaving hers during the drive to the estate. The main house was lit with what seemed like 1,000 candles, the formal dining room transformed into something between elegant and romantic. And gathered around the table were faces Jennifer had come to know: Marco and his wife Sofia, Luca and his partner Elena, Antonio with his daughter, and, to her surprise, Santoro with his wife Maria. "What is this?" Jennifer whispered as they entered. "Family," Alvaro said simply. "The people who matter most." Dinner was magnificent: courses of traditional Italian cuisine prepared by the estate's chef, wine from the family's private vineyard, conversation that flowed easily despite the mix of dangerous men and the women who'd chosen to love them. Jennifer found herself laughing at Sofia's story about Marco's disastrous attempt at cooking, offering her own opinions on a restoration project Luca was considering, discussing art history with Santoro, who turned out to be a passionate collector. This was acceptance, she realized. Not just tolerance or political necessity, but genuine welcome into a world that fiercely protected its own. As dessert was served, a decadent tiramisu that melted on her tongue, Alvaro stood, his glass in hand. The table quieted immediately. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, his voice carrying that note of authority that commanded attention. "The past weeks have shown me something I already knew but needed to see proven: that Jennifer belongs here, with us, as part of this family." Jennifer's heart began to race. She's demonstrated her value professionally, her strength personally, and her commitment absolutely. Alvaro's gaze found hers, holding it with an intensity that made the rest of the room fade. "She's proven that my choice to claim her wasn't a weakness or a liability, but the smartest decision I've ever made." He moved from his seat, and Jennifer's breath caught as he came to stand beside her chair. When he reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small velvet box, the world seemed to tilt. "Jennifer Hawkins." He opened the box, revealing a ring that stole her breath, an emerald surrounded by diamonds, antique and exquisite. "This ring belonged to my grandmother, and her mother before that. It's been passed down through generations to women strong enough to stand beside Cremonesi men and smart enough to keep them in line." Soft laughter rippled around the table, but Jennifer barely heard it, too focused on Alvaro's face, on the vulnerability beneath the formal words. "I told you weeks ago that you were mine. That I chose you and would keep choosing you." He took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. "Now I'm asking you to choose me officially, permanently, in front of the people who will stand beside us for the rest of our lives. Marry me, Jennifer. Be my wife, my partner, my equal. Build this empire with me and make it something worth more than just power and territory." Tears blurred her vision, but she didn't try to stop them. "You already know my answer. Say it anyway." His smile was soft, just for her despite their audience. "I need to hear it." "Yes." Jennifer stood, her hands finding his face. "Yes, I'll marry you. Today, tomorrow, whenever you want. I'm already yours. This just makes it official." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and the fit was perfect, like it had been waiting for her all along. Then he kissed her, thorough and claiming and absolutely appropriate despite their audience, because she was about to be his wife, and everyone in this room already knew exactly how he felt about her. The table erupted in applause and congratulations. Sofia was crying happy tears, Elena was already planning wedding details, and even Santoro looked genuinely pleased. "Welcome officially to the family," Marco said, embracing Jennifer warmly. "God help Alvaro, he has no idea what he's gotten himself into." "I think I do," Alvaro countered, his arm secure around Jennifer's waist. "And I've never been more certain of anything." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of celebration and champagne, of toasts and laughter, and the warm acceptance of people who'd become family. But the moment that stayed with Jennifer came later, when she and Alvaro stepped onto the estate's terrace for a breath of air. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, looking at the ring glittering on her finger. "Marriage is different from just being together. It's permanent, binding. If you have any doubts, no doubts." Alvaro pulled her close, his hand cradling the back of her head. "I've never been more certain of anything. You are my heart, Jennifer. My conscience. The thing that makes all of this," he gestured to the estate, the empire beyond, "actually means something. Even when I challenge you, question your decisions." She smiled against his chest. "Especially then." His arms tightened. I don't need someone who agrees with everything I say. I need someone who makes me think, who reminds me there's more to life than strategy and control. You do that. You make me better. Jennifer looked up at him, this dangerous man who'd let her past every wall, who trusted her with his heart despite every instinct trained into him. When do you want to do this? The wedding. As soon as possible. His smile turned wicked. I've waited long enough to make you officially mine. I'm not waiting any longer than necessary. Possessive. Always. No apology, just honesty. You knew what you were getting into. I did. She traced the line of his jaw, marveling that she got to touch him like this, that this fierce, powerful man was hers. And I don't regret a second of it. They stood together on the terrace as night deepened over the Lombardy hills, the lights of Milan glittering in the distance. Behind them, the sounds of their family celebrating drifted through the open doors. Ahead of them lay a future neither had planned, but both had chosen, complicated and dangerous and absolutely theirs. I love you, Alvaro said, the words coming easier now, like he was learning to speak a new language. More than power, more than this empire, more than anything I thought I wanted before you walked into my life. I love you too. Jennifer's hand found his, their fingers interlacing, the ring solid and real between them. My dangerous, possessive, surprisingly romantic mafia boss. His laugh was genuine, unguarded, the sound of a man who'd finally found something worth more than survival. Your mafia boss. Soon to be your husband. Forever. Forever, Jennifer agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss. And as the stars emerged overhead and the celebration continued inside, they held each other and planned a future that would be anything but ordinary, but would be absolutely, perfectly theirs. Some stories ended with happy ever after. Theirs was just beginning, with a wedding to plan, an empire to build, and a love strong enough to survive anything the world threw at them. Together, they were unstoppable. And together, they always would be. Thanks for listening to this story. Please subscribe and click the video on the left side of your screen. It's even more interesting than the one you just listened to.